Hello everybody, and welcome to my review of volume number 10 of Reki Kawahara's light novel series, Accel World. This is the short story volume. It contains 3 different stories. It's released in English by Yen On. If you want to get your own copy, I do have a link in the description down below. It's an affiliate link. It gets me a couple of pennies that I can put towards buying more books for the channel. So, these stories are set rather early in the Accel World storyline. Story number 1 takes place within weeks of volume number 1. Story number 2 takes place during the Dusk Taker storyline, which is volumes 3 and 4. And the final story, I'm not too sure when it takes place. It's a little weird in terms of, it's not very clear where it takes place in the Accel World storyline. It's obviously after Dusk Taker, but I do believe it's most definitely before the whole Chrome disaster storyline that we've just kind of finished. So it's probably between volumes 4 and 5. In terms of Sword Art Online, and you're like, why does that matter? And we'll get there, but in terms of Sword Art Online, it takes place right at the very, very beginning of Alicization arc. Overall, it's not a bad volume. Definitely the middle story, which focuses on Kurayuki Hime and what happens to her while she's on her school vacation in volumes 3 and 4, is the strongest of the stories and probably has the more potential to have long-term lasting effects in terms of the accelerated world and sort of some mysteries resolving, sort of around the whole way that the Brain Burst program works. It's certainly a lot of fun because we are seeing the story for the first time from Kurayuki Hime's point of view. So it's like she's usually this very sort of warm yet somewhat aloof character throughout the rest of the series. It was kind of nice for once to get inside her head a little bit, see what matters to her, see her feelings for Haruyuki from her side as opposed to from Haru's side. It was also kind of cool to have a character in Accel World who is confident, pretty much. It's not like Haruyuki, who's always so full of doubt and self-loathing and everything else. So it was a lot of fun to read that second story, and as I said, it had the potential to have sort of the largest ramifications for the accelerated world. And it also fills in a bit of a blank, because if you remember back in volume number 4, Kurayuki Hime does kind of show up at the end of it. And it gives you an idea of sort of how that happened. Story number 1 is kind of a throwaway. It's pretty much the story of when Haruyuki first levels up enough, gets enough Brain Burst points to become level 2. And in his excitement and leveling up, he leaves himself with only 8 points, meaning that he's 1 loss away from being eliminated from Brain Burst. I think this story doesn't work the greatest just because since it's set so early on and we know for a fact that Haruyuki didn't get kicked out of the program, it eliminates a lot of the tension and drama that could have been present. You're really just sitting there going, all right, well, I know you get out of it, but how do you get out of it? I think the real thrust of this story and what makes it at least, a little bit fun and interesting is just that it presents an alternative way that some people play the game. In this case, what it has to do with is a character who is playing as a bodyguard. And so what this character does essentially is they are very strong and very powerful, and so they team up with low-level 1 or 2 players that are in danger of losing Brain Burst and does tag team matches with that person until they have enough of a buffer that they can successfully go ahead and play normal matches without the threat of an immediate elimination. I've already talked a little bit about story number 2 and why I enjoyed it. Story number 3 is it's like if it didn't appear under Reki Kawahara's pen name, it would be fan fiction. It starts probably with the sort of discussion that fans often have with each other when they're fans of multiple franchises, which is, man, what do you think would happen if Kirito and Silver Crow fought in a Brain Burst battle? And that's exactly what happens in this third story. It is an all-out just duel between our 2 main characters from the 2 largest of the Reki Kawahara series. How that comes to be is a lot of ridiculous pseudoscience. In fact, I would say each of these stories suffer a little bit from that introduction of that whole Deus Ex Machina type element. In the first story, it has to do with why it is that Haruyuki, having gone through his experiences and worked with this bodyguard, why he doesn't just blab about it to everybody. The second one has to do with the usual Reki Kawahara use of Deus Ex Machina, which is our characters get into a situation which seems impossible for them to survive, and Reki Kawahara seems to bend the rules, if not entirely break them, in order to make something happen to save our characters. And then finally, in the third one, like I said, it's the crazy pseudoscience that really makes no sense. And it eventually allows for this match between Silver Crow and Kirito. Now, I think as much as I would probably not mind the third story as much, if it weren't for Reki Kawahara in the afterword of the book basically saying, yeah, it's just fun and just, you should really just think about it as two parallel worlds just intermixing for a moment, that you really shouldn't read anything into it. He's pretty much seeming to try and kibosh the fan theory that Kuriyuki Hime is the daughter potentially of Kirito and Asuna. What I kind of thought, though, when I was reading that is, I'm like, if there are parallel worlds, then that could mean that if this isn't the exact same world as Sword Art Online, it still means that Kuriyuki Hime could be Kirito's daughter. Think about it for a moment. Not the Kirito that we know and that we read, but imagine a Kirito in another world. He'd still obviously be interested in VR MMO technology, but what would happen if that Kirito either A, never met Asuna, B, did get involved in the SAO incident and met Asuna, but she died and they never were able to get together? You can start to see where that could be a very, very different Kirito, and potentially could lead to the nasty family situation that Kuriyuki Hime has sort of hinted at in terms of her family dynamic. Again, this is just total fan speculation on my part, but I just kind of thought that it was funny that at the same time that Kawahara is kind of closing the door on that fan theory, he's kind of opening a door that you could see that it would actually kind of work without being a total crap on Asuna and Kirito's relationship in Sword Art Online. It's just a thing. I'm still really hoping that these series somehow, in some clever way, meet with each other. There is just so much shared technology at this point, especially now with the Alicization arc, that it just seems like such a wasted opportunity not to somehow tie these series together in an interesting and dynamic way. But in any case, so this third story, like I said, it is really just a fighting story. The bulk of it is just action, these two people fighting each other. Really, the only other story elements to it are A, how the battle begins, and B, them having some slight reflection on what they've gone through afterward. So it really does, it reads like fan fiction. I mean, there's just no other way to go about it. All in all, though, these three stories in general, I mean, they're fun. Obviously, they could never have survived any one of them as being expanded out to be an entire volume. Definitely the first story and the last story are just sort of entertaining bits, and the majority of them are fighting scenes. And again, that first story, though, it's just a little kind of fun just to see another sort of side of the Brain Burst program and how people play it differently. But definitely story number 2, it is, like I said, quite entertaining, and it's fun to finally sort of experience Accel World from Kuriyuki Hime's point of view, and to kind of get to know her a little bit more as a character and sort of see what her life is away from Haruyuki and Taku and Shiori and, all of the sort of Brain Burst Nebula stuff. It's also kind of fun because it gives you an idea to see how Brain Bursters who aren't in the hub and the hype of Tokyo itself kind of have a different feel for the program and laissez-faire type approach to the program. So all in all, second story, very strong, very fun, very interesting. Does contain, like I said, a Deus Ex Machina moment that either it's going to cheese you off because it's the only time it will ever happen, or it could be really, really interesting because it has wider implications. I'm not too sure. time will only tell, but I'd be more hyped about it and interested in it if it has longer term and wider ramifications down the road. If it's a one-off time thing that never happens again and is never mentioned again, I'll just be like, wow, Kawahara, you were trying to be dramatic, but you just kind of got a little lazy and decided to break your own rules for the sake of the story that you wanted to tell. So all in all, actually, I really enjoyed this one. As much as I've kind of poo-pooed a lot of the short story volumes, this one was enjoyable enough. Definitely, you have to come into it having read up to volume number 9. There are things that are going to be spoilers for the series if you haven't read up to that point, or they're going to be discussing things that I think you enjoy more having that insider knowledge of what's happened up to this point, as opposed to if you went into it blind and didn't really know everything. But I mean, again, like you're going to be reading the series in order, so, but it makes sense to me now why, even though these stories are set early in Accel World's history, why you really couldn't read them and get the full experience of them until this point. Either that or Kawahara just really didn't have anything to say that particular month, and just wanted to throw out a bunch of fillers. I don't know. All in all, though, not a bad volume. Pretty entertaining, especially if you're a fan of Accel World. And yeah, I'm looking forward to actually getting back, though, to the main storyline in volume number 11. So those are my thoughts on volume number 10 of Accel World, the short story volume. My next review is going to be on a brand new book that is released. It's it's been a one-shot volume for the past 2 years, but apparently this year there's a volume 2 coming out, probably because of the brand new anime that has just released, and that is Juni Taisen. This one being Nisio Isen's attempt to tell a fate stay night type story. I mean, it's a little bit different, obviously, but a bunch of people get together to kill each other so that the winner can be granted a wish. I mean, it sounds pretty familiar. So that's going to be my next review. So if you love light novels and you're brand new to the channel, you should consider subscribing. I do 2 to 3 reviews every single week, as well as a weekly countdown of the top 10 best-selling light novels in Japan. Thank you all for joining me in this video, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Till then, bye-bye for now.